All right, we'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee to order. Would you please call the roll?
Councilor Bell?
Here.
Councilor Herbstreit? Here. Mayor Smith?
Here. All right, first item on the agenda is the review and approval of the minutes from our January 27th meeting.
A motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Those minutes are approved. We now have the public comment section. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak for public comments for planning and economic development?
It's now or never. Oh. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, if you're here to speak for public comments, please step forward, state your name and address to the microphone, and you've got 3 minutes.
Appreciate it. I will take all three, I promise.
Okay.
Patrick Sowers, Dave Holiday Construction.
Right.
Here to speak on the 520 North Pleasant Valley application. We did hear some of the concerns raised at the last meeting, so we did go back. We have gone with all two-story product types, but still committed to upgraded side elevations, additional windows, different siding types through the gable ends. And some of the other concerns we heard were kind of try to transition it back so it relates better to Pleasant Valley Road itself. So the middle 4 units we have now turned so it does face Pleasant Valley Road. And I think there were some secondary concerns about even density to a degree, and we did drop it from 37 units to 34 units with this footprint. We did all that without impacting setbacks except for very slightly to the rear of the site, which is adjacent to the lots that have the deepest existing yards. But along either side, we didn't extend into those yards from what we had proposed with the 3-story product type. So I'm happy to answer any questions that do come up during your discussions. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I appreciate your statement during public comments, and we'll be able to interact with you during the presentation as well. All right, so first item on the agenda, Alfredo, you're going to talk to us about a text amendment addressing solar energy systems.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yeah, so staff's taken on the initiation of, recommended the initiation of a text amendment for solar energy systems within the city of Winchester. As it stands right now, the zoning ordinance makes no allude or reference to solar energy systems, roof-mounted solar. And the only way that they can be approved now are through accessory use on a building as a regular building permit, which is fine. But there's no definition for what a solar energy system is, and any guidance or regulations pertaining to them. And so there's that deficiency in the zoning ordinance. And so what staff has done through this text amendment is define what a solar energy system is. Do I have? Define the term solar energy system. There's several terms that can be used. Staff believes that this one term could encompass everything related to solar. And then establish districts. Where are they an accessory use? Where are they a principal use? As I said, right now they can be accessory in any district as part of a structure. And then identify districts where they could potentially be a principal use if it were ever to occur. And then again, supplemental regulations to them. Where can they be placed? What are the regulations to those locations where they are? What can be the projection from a structure, etc. And so, solar energy system, very brief. It's the use of equipment for the conversion of sunlight into energy, electricity, in the form of electricity, yeah. So, in all, with this text amendment, it'll be an accessory use in all zoning districts. Any zoning district, if a property owner would like to have solar equipment installed on any of their structures, they can do so by right. Apply for a building permit, no problem, and they'd be treated similar to accessory structures. They can be installed on the ground-mounted solar. That's highly unlikely due to the size of the lots, the expense of the systems, and then depending on where their location is, the surrounding buildings, foliage, etc. There's a lot of considerations there. So that's why most of the systems that are within Winchester limits are roof-mounted systems. And then principal uses based on characteristics of a few sites that would be appropriate, or could be appropriate based on the zoning districts, would be the B2 district, CM1 district, M1, M2, and education and public use districts. Now that would be primarily for if, say, there were large enough properties within the city of Winchester where a property owner would like to install solar primarily for off-site consumption. Whereas accessory uses, if you have mounted on a roof, primarily for on-site production and on-site use. In some cases, if it were ever to happen, it could be that in some of these larger sites produce excess energy and they want to use it at a different site. So that's commonly what you would receive as a solar facility or solar farm. Again, I don't know what the likelihood of those actually going into Winchester limits is at the time being, but as technology advances and become more efficient, I mean, it's possible. And then supplemental regulations, pretty straightforward. I think a lot of the staff, based on research that they did in other localities and reaching out to solar installers and manufacturers of solar components and equipment, again, most of the installations and equipment type we're going to see in Winchester city limits is going to be structure-mounted systems, specifically roof-mounted systems. That's not to say that they can't be installed on the side of a building. It's just, it all depends on sun angle orientation of the building, and they're usually very expensive due to the customization. So pretty basic stuff, limiting what the projection of equipment could be from a structure, limiting projection beyond roof edge, and then additional regulations for freestanding system, which is your commonly ground-mounted systems. Basically go anywhere where an accessory structure can go now, we would treat them no different. Obviously, they'd be prohibited in the front yard or in the required side yard unless they were a principal use, which again, if it were a solar facility or solar farm, as they're commonly referred to. So I'm happy to take any questions that the committee may have.
All right.
I have,
Yeah,
if I
David,
may,
absolutely.
I actually don't have any questions. I have a couple comments. I am so happy to finally see this come to light. This is something that I've been talking about for quite some time, hoping that it would eventually come to the city of Winchester. I've traveled a lot, and there's communities that are older than Winchester, that are villages that have these, and their own buildings, and you really don't even notice them because you're looking at the architecture of the buildings. And like having several old buildings myself down here, I know that the solar panels will help things things to be more efficient and less costly. So thank you for doing this. I will support this text amendment.
Kim, you have questions?
I would just echo what the mayor just shared, and I think whatever we can do to support solar is going to be a good thing for our community. It's good to see this coming forward, and I would support it as well.
All right, Alfredo, I got just one question specifically about when we're defining solar energy systems. This specifically talks to the conversion to electricity. How would this apply if someone were to implement like a solar hot water panel or solar heated system, which is still a viable conversion of energy?
Right. That is something that staff considered. I know that especially in older buildings, I want to say probably around the 70s, those hot water systems were popular, mounted on the roof. If that's something that council wishes to broaden, that the committee would recommend for staff to include in their definition so that it doesn't specifically exclude that, kind of more of a coverall instead of saying specifically electricity, you see into energy, that might be more appropriate, right, where they able to cover it, where technically sun beating down on that, it's not promoting electricity, it's just warming water, so that's something that we can incorporate.
Well, and you referenced the technology ever changing. I mean, I know this is kind of a first world problem. We have a swimming pool in our backyard with an accessory structure. The decision was, do you want to put solar photovoltaic on it or solar hot water? You don't have enough room to do both. But I'm aware that there's technologies that actually would implement both of them together. So at the time in which that occurs,
Okay.
how do you address that?
Right.
So, I mean, you know, this is great, and I am definitely in support of it as well. I just want to make sure we're not being overly restrictive unawarely. The other thing that I made a note of is there's a large ground-mounted solar array out at the hospital complex. That's not addressed as a by right location. I think that's MC.
Right, and so the way staff has looked at, staff's interpretation on that specific site is that's an accessory use to the hospital. The energy being produced there is primarily for consumption on site, whereas if it was a standalone property where all of the energy being produced there was fed to another site, then that would change the nature of it, right? Then that would be a principal use, a large-scale solar facility. That's not to say that in some case that if the hospital decided to do that to feed some of their other properties that they couldn't do so. I do believe there is a there is a way, I'm not sure of all the details, to do a net metering credit of some sort, right? You sell back electricity and then you can apply it elsewhere. That can be incorporated there. I don't know that it wouldn't be appropriate there, but that's the way staff's interpretation was, an accessory use, so.
Right. Yeah, I mean, my view in that scenario is nobody knows where the electricity is going at that point if it's just being attached to the grid. If the on-site use is of sufficient demand, yeah, then it doesn't leave site, but nobody's monitoring that.
Right.
So that doesn't change the existence of that solar array at that location.
Correct.
So to me, it doesn't matter whether it's on-site or off-site. It's just its existence
Right.
there.
And then one comment to that, just to confirm, because I know I've had this question from commissioners, is what about net metering? And again, that's why if most of the energy is generated primarily, right, that's where that keyword primarily for off-site. You know, some people, if a homeowner produces more energy and then they use, of course, it goes back into the grid, and that's just standard net metering. That wouldn't be a principal use. So I just wanted to clarify that because I know I've had that question as well. So
yeah, these are, to me, this is what I'm talking about, are minor tweaks and whatnot, and I don't think there's no issue with hydronic or
No, but going back to your comment about the heating of hot water and everything. So can you put language in there so that it can be more inclusive, and so that like in time, as technology grows, then it won't seem restrictive.
Right.
And if I may, I think where simply in the definition of changing conversion of sunlight into electricity into energy, I think that might just cover it all instead of having.
I would agree.
So staff can make that change. And I did notice, if I may again, under Article 8, 10, and 11, I used the word primary use 3 different times. I'm going to change that to principal, just a Scrivener's error. It should be principal. So just a quick note.
Okay. I mean, these are minor edits, changes. Are we comfortable forwarding this? All right.
Absolutely.
All right. So I entertain a motion to forward with a recommendation.
Motion to forward with a recommendation to approve.
So I have a motion to forward with a recommendation for approval. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. This moves forward to a future city council meeting. Okay. Next item on the agenda. This is fun. Planning and Zoning Inspections Annual Report in draft form. David? All right. Tell us what you got.
Yes, so I put together just a couple slides here to review the annual planning and zoning and inspections report that we put together. The items that I focused on were here in the presentation were the case activities that went from Planning Commission through City Council, such as rezonings, conditional uses, et cetera. So focusing on those items, some of the statistics from last year are on the screen. We did have an uptick in rezoning applications in 2021, which piggybacked on an uptick in rezonings in 2020. So, over the past 3 years, there's been a significant increase in rezonings coming through the planning department. Conditional use permits stayed even, stayed pretty consistent. Text amendments last year, with the previous zoning administrator, there was an uptick in applications, but we're back down to a normal amount. We had 5 text amendments last year. The report itself is in the packet. I'd be happy to answer any questions about it. We did focus on some of the major projects that received approval last year, such as the development on Leg Boulevard for a PUD site called the Winchester Commons, and some of the other large projects in the city, such as the Trex Company headquarters.
Can you use your,
Yes.
that just in case people are actually watching, so they can see the slides?
Oh, okay, yes. Well, that, as far as the slides, that's the only slide that I have, but the report is in the agenda packet for the full report. Is in there.
And we can post it to the website.
Yes, absolutely. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about the PCI report.
Any questions? Ken, you have any questions? I just made a note. I was kind of, I'm funny this way. I was just kind of looking at the math because I was trying to kind of just, let's see, which one is this on? So you don't have the one up there for site plans.
No, I do not.
So that one I'm looking at, you've got, and I'm trying to understand the math process where if you're carrying 11 in from last year, from the prior year, then you received 52 new applications. That's
yes,
a total of 63. When you look at the approvals, withdrawals, and the carryover, it doesn't add up.
the approvals would be based on, well, starting with the applications that were applications, those were applications received during the calendar year. The approvals column is of those 52, 39.
Of those 52?
Yes.
Not necessarily, how are we tracking the 11 that carried over from the prior year?
I think in many years past, those were factored in as that year approval, but it did get complicated to keep track of the numbers in terms of which ones from a previous year were approved, and so that's why.
So if it was submitted in like
yes.
2020 and got a site plan stamp of
In
SP 2020, yada, yada,
right.
it's going to reflect back when it's finally approved to 2020.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
That would be,
Okay. All right, this, and in, again, you don't have it up here, but on the page 5, you have something referred to as the housing choice voucher that I'm not familiar with, or if I've heard it.
It's like section 8.
Yeah, but you, it's, okay, so housing choice voucher is a Section 8 or housing subsidy program. So that is used using virtual inspections, not all residential use inspections.
correct. It's specifically housing choice vouchers that changed to virtual inspections, so therefore our staff is not undertaking those inspections anymore.
Okay.
So some of the units that are in the choice voucher program also fall in the rental inspection program, so they're not exclusive of each other.
They're not.
No.
All right, so they would still require the inspections.
Regardless of whether they're a housing choice voucher unit or not.
Okay. And then just underneath that, just out of curiosity, where it says does not include ROW poll data?
Oh, that was another statistic that we used to maintain in terms of, I believe, like right-of-way encroachments or signage that was placed in. Yeah.
Oh, got it.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I know what you mean, I just don't speak the lingo.
That's right.
Okay. Go questions come up. Yes, go
Are you
ahead.
done?
Yep.
Okay. Staying on that page 5, curious with regards to the graffiti.
Can you go, excuse me, are you able to go online to pull it up?
Let's see. Yeah, maybe I should get out.
Because I think it would be helpful if everybody in here can see it.
While they're doing that, let me just point out that the city code requires that the planning commission submit an annual report to council every year. But for probably 20 years, we've also included some of this additional content from the building inspections and from zoning enforcement, and also showing you the number of cases that the Board of Architecture Review and the Board of Zoning Appeals did. So a lot of this is additional information, but not mandated in the city code the way the planning commission's review is.
Got it. This is all very helpful.
So curious about, I mean, I've certainly seen a noticeable increase in graffiti. So what can you say about that increase? And that's code violations, so is that the property owner that's getting cited for that, or can you say a little bit more about
Sure.
that?
I do believe that would go to the property owner. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. So that all depends on if it's the property owner that rents the property to a tenant or leases it, then the letter will go to the property owner on record on the property card, but the violation may have stemmed from a tenant. Right. So even though it may have been a tenant that caused a zoning violation, it would still go to the property owner on record.
The reason, like I said, I've seen an increase in graffiti, and I see it on electrical boxes and fences, and and having lived in a community that had a significant amount of graffiti, it was always kind of a concern on who's taking care of the graffiti, and the sooner you can get it taken care of, the better chance of not having it happen again. And so, I guess maybe this is a broader question or deeper question. I mean, I'd be interested in, what I've done in the past. I mean, there's taggers and there's gangs, and, I think knowing from law enforcement, who are those folks, and is there a way to kind of do some targeted enforcement rather than putting that responsibility on the property owner if it's not the property owner, somebody's just come by and, tag their fence. So, I see a significant increase, which, again, it's reflective of what I've seen, and I want to make sure that we keep our community looking good, right, and not having a bunch of graffitis, all over the place. So,
And that's why a number of years ago, council adopted the provisions in code that basically said the city of Winchester will cover the expense so that the victim of the graffiti doesn't have to bear the burden of that cost for something that they didn't commit.
yeah, I mean, I would be interested in if there's a law enforcement piece to this, because, I just want to make sure that, as the community grows, folks come to the community, and, I just want to make sure that we stay a nice, beautiful community. So, all right, thank you.
We can bring an update on that particular topic to the next Public Health and Safety
Yeah,
Committee
that'd
meeting,
be
so
great.
we're
Yep.
Can I piggyback on that?
Sure.
Are we doing, I guess, routine or semi-routine checks throughout the community to see if there's code violations?
Yes, sir. So we do have it's twofold. You have the zoning aspect. You have zoning code enforcement related to violations on private property, anything that's not in the right of way. And then there's also the property maintenance / inspections department under the purview of the building official. They're primarily complaint-based, but they also have their zones or sectors in the city that they periodically go through on a daily basis, and they look for blatant violations. So say, dilapidated buildings, damaged structures, et cetera. So yes, there's regular, what's the word, inspections of those different zones.
I'll And that's the answer that I wanted. I was hoping that it wasn't just complaint-based, that because there are pockets in the community that are in violation of some things that need to be addressed. So.
Yes, sir. And so, yeah, so a lot of it is primarily complaint based, but again, if there's a blatant violation, if there appears to be a getter hanging and it's dropping water into the public right of way that can cause a safety hazard, then that will be addressed then and there.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Yes.
Just to add on to that, as you mentioned, there are 3 code enforcement officers. They have their own quadrants of the city that they routinely patrol, and the city manager has instituted some fairly regular neighborhood walks to make sure that things are addressed, and the rental housing registration and the rental housing inspection is also an ongoing thing.
Thank you.
Any other questions? The only other thing I would add is, I mean, these charts are great. I mean, all of the charts in here are very helpful. A lot of it is in the form of kind of, we'll call it raw data. If in staff's opinion, there are graphs that would be more representative that might show trends to be aware of or trends to acknowledge, that might be helpful. You can kind of go in and extract that and kind of come up with your own conclusion, but you have a limited data set. If the staff has a much deeper bench of the levels of rezoning have been constantly going up, we should, be prepared for an expectation of that to continue, whatever the data shows. So, okay.
Just out of curiosity,
Yes.
is this the first time we received an annual report? Because I don't think I remember receiving one in council meetings before.
I think you started in February with PED committees last year. So
No, not just in the committee, but just in general to council.
I know that I have presented to full council on many occasions. I can't guarantee it was every single occasion.
Okay.
And you said, Tim, that it was actually in code or a requirement for the planning commission.
Just for the
to
planning
report on.
commission.
Okay.
Right.
I think this as a consolidated kind of development services across the board kind of can help.
Yeah, this format we've probably used for, I would say, at least 25 years now.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Very helpful.
Yeah, it is.
All right, thank you, David. Unless you're up next, yeah, okay. So the next item on the agenda is a rezoning, an ordinance to rezone 2.82 acres of land at 520 North Pleasant Valley. This is under a, let's see. No, we're just rezoning it to add the PUD overlay. Correct. All right. And this was continued from a prior meeting, and I think this is what Patrick was making reference to. So I'll go ahead and defer to you, David, on updates.
Thank you. In the agenda packet, there is an updated staff report. And as the applicant, Mr. Sowers, did state in his public comments, the applicant has updated their development plan. I have some slides here that would kind of show the evolution of the proposal. Back on November 22nd, we had units facing the street without driveways. They changed that plan by January 24th to have the units all face the new public street with no units facing North Pleasant Valley. And this proposal, the January 24th one, still had 3-story units in it. So as a response to the conversation at the previous PED committee meeting, they have adjusted their plan to larger footprint 2-story units. And they've done so without affecting, to a great degree, the setbacks to the north and to the south, which would be the right and the left on the image. And the units at the bottom of the image, which are on the east side of the site, did move closer to property lines of the single-family homes on the other side. However, those properties are set back a great distance from Battle Avenue, as you can see on the image above. So the key important elements, Mr. Sowers did discuss that they lowered their density from 37 to 34 in the current proposal. They now have units facing the street, facing North Pleasant Valley. The overall green space area has generally stayed the same between the different proposals. And let's see, other changes they've made on site. They do have architectural renderings for the new 2-story units, as shown here. They are all still with a parking pad and a parking garage in the unit. Some of the draft elevations here show a side elevation for the units at the north end of the site and the south end of the site that would still have the sides being closest to North Pleasant Valley Road. They have an upgraded facade with a foundation stone veneer running along the length of the side elevation there. The applicant has also updated their fiscal impacts analysis based on the 34 units at an average assessed value of $350,000, which has increased from the initial fiscal impacts analysis that was submitted with the application. They now predict a net positive fiscal impact analysis of about $14,000 for the city. I'd be happy to answer any other questions
Okay. Thanks,
regarding
David.
this rezoning.
Any questions from the committee?
Yeah, I have
David.
a question and a comment. The comment that I have is I want to thank the developer for going back, taking a look at it, and making the changes. This is what I called. This is what I call a good relationship with developers and partners in the community. This question is either for you, David, or either the developer. If you go back to showing where the side view is, now, will this side view be on Pleasant Valley? Just for two?
2 units, yes.
So,
North and south.
right, question, is there a concern of people looking into the window of those two?
So the other thing that shows on here, you can see the street trees that they're proposing. They're the 3 up there in the upper left, in addition
Okay, gotcha.
to
Yep.
an evergreen screen along the street.
Okay.
So there'll be physical separation as well as visual.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, they are proposing a continuous 4 feet to be maintained at 4 feet height
Okay.
along that facade or that elevation.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Kim, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I as well, I'm happy to see this. I think, thank you for taking the suggestions and the comments we had at our last meeting and incorporating them in. I did have a question on this map right here. So those 2 facing Pleasant Valley, what is that's white section there between those 2? What is that? Is that going to be a pedestrian walkway through there, or what is that?
Between the driveways, perhaps, is that?
Between the 2
Oh,
buildings,
between
the
the
2 and
buildings.
2, and then there's that white section. It's up there on Pleasant Valley, and then down further in the. It looks like is it a walk?
The reason for that color is that the applicant is not factoring that into their total green space calculation based on the proximity of the structures. There's certain language in the code about distance between structures factoring into the green space. So in that image, you're seeing that area not being shaded the green space color, and
But
it's not being included.
will it be
in there.
be grass, or is it going to be concrete? It'll be
It
grass.
would be green.
Okay.
It'll look very much like the
Yeah.
areas that do have
Okay.
that green shading. It's just that it doesn't count in the mathematics.
Okay. Yeah.
calculation.
All right. Yeah, I just wasn't sure. It looked like it might be an inviting,
understand.
concrete walkway or something.
Skateboard park.
A what?
Skateboard park, right?
Let's see, and then, am I understanding, so I'm looking at the side view and I'm looking at the front. So that's the front, but if you go to the side view, is the front on that to the right or to the left?
I believe it's to the left in the image.
That
To the
cantilever
left is
second
the
floor
front.
is more than likely at the back.
Okay, it's just not reflected in the front view, it seems like.
What you see that gable end right there?
Oh, that's, okay, that's,
Because you're
okay,
seeing that
yep, yep,
project
yep,
in that
yep,
direction.
I got it, yep. Yep,
Yeah.
I'm good.
All right, any other discussion on that?
No, no, that's all I have.
All right,
Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Yeah.
just in terms of public input that you have already received, including the woman who spoke under public comments 2 nights ago.
Yes.
I was able to catch her at the end of the meeting to let her know that it has been changed to all 2-story. There is no 3-story. The other comment she had was about not wanting this new street to be a public street. Public Services Director Perry Eisenach actually recommended that this be a public street, and her concern was about taxpayer money to pay for maintenance of that. We actually get additional allocation through VDOT for that, so it really is not a net impact to us.
was that explained to her as well? Or is that not?
I tried to explain that didn't go over well.
Okay, all right, well, that's helpful to be reminded of that. The questions I have, and this to either you, David, or Tim, is that I don't view this as a dramatic departure, and I too want to show appreciation for the developer of hearing the feedback and the comments and adjusting the design and the layout accordingly. While there was only one, I think, who was had issue with the height on the planning commission, this does not warrant a change that would go back to the planning commission at all. Just wanted to state that for the record. The question about with the rear yard, I know there was reference to the houses fronting on Battle Drive having deep lots, but this and therefore being farther away structure to structure, but this still meets the rear yard setbacks.
The rear yard setback is what you approve as part of the PUD. Yes. It could be as little as 0. We advise applicants not to do that.
Got it. Okay. Then in further in, there was a drawing that I think was kind of trying to explain the drainage, because that's been another issue of feedback from some of those living in the area. Had some red and blue lines on there that seem to be trying to describe the drainage plan. Obviously, we're not at a site plan where it's going to give you, I think it's, let's see, in the PDF presentation, it's page 29 of 49. It's also got the floor plans of the units on there.
Oh, it's the packet from the applicant. Yeah, I did not include
Oh,
that in
okay.
the PowerPoint.
So if,
It's not one of the slides that we included as part of the PowerPoint for the meeting itself, but it is
Okay.
in your packet and out there for the public to see.
okay. So maybe Patrick, I mean, can you describe this? You've got these lines that are showing, I guess, the flow? Or one of you, I don't know. This is,
Right, no, I understand. Ron Maslowski with Pannoni. There was a comment made at the previous meeting about some ponding and some rear yards.
Right.
And so the only thing I wanted to do was show that we are decreasing the actual drainage flow to those areas that were in question. The areas, the frontal Patterson, will be significantly reduced. There won't be any building area draining that way. And the same thing for the properties along Battle. We're significantly reducing that surface flow that runs off that site right now. And so that's the only thing I was trying to address, was that, you know, especially for the lady on Patterson who said there was a pond or something back there. I can't do anything about the pond, but we are going to decrease the amount of water that goes to that lady's lot.
Okay. That's just what I wanted to understand. Okay. Thank you, Ron. Any other questions, concerns?
I have a comment and a question. One comment, thank you for including the HOA. I think it's helpful information, especially for residents. I know that this might not be the final, but if residents are concerned about like the number of animals and all that kind of stuff, that I think that's helpful information for people to have. And I have to ask this question, are any of the units projected to be affordable?
So these are all going to be market rate units. Now, that doesn't mean that you might not have one unit that has, you know, lesser upgrades interior that might hit a lower price point than the others. But as far as carving some units out for a separate price point from the others, other than the features list, the plan still to have like a common base price, and then it kind of goes up based on your option selections.
And that would be kind of the difference between the tankless water heater versus.
Sure.
Yeah.
If you're doing
Yeah.
hardwoods throughout or
Yeah.
things like that.
All right, thank you.
And these are all for sale. These are
All for sale, right. These are not rentals.
Thank you.
And if the rezoning is approved, you will see this again at TED and council for the subdivision
Right.
approval. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right, unless there's any other discussion on this item.
Motion to forward with approval.
I have a motion to forward with a recommendation for approval. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that item is forwarded to a future council meeting. Next, we have Tim Humans giving us the development projects update.
Are you okay if I sit here?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, that's fine, as long as you got it. So you have a single page outline there, and available on computer. I also have some hard copies if anybody would like to look at that instead. We were asked to give a simple summary of development activity, particularly larger developments such as the planned unit developments, and what the status of their either approval or construction is if they've advanced to the stage of construction. So this is a list, and I welcome any suggestions from the committee members in terms of how we could make this more useful to you. If you want more columns of information, or if you want me to present some graphics of projects that are under construction, I would be glad to do that for future meetings. Beginning at the top, the Harrison Plaza is actually about the only one that is physically under construction other than Meadow Branch Phase 2, the second item at the top. They haven't started building structures yet, but they have done a significant amount of earthwork. And if you go by Harrison Plaza, you will see both of the residential buildings, the residential-only buildings. Those two are well under construction. The third building, which would be the mixed-use building facing down on Hope Drive Extension, that is yet to get started. They really need the city to finish the Hope Drive project before they can start pouring foundation and constructing the parking for that building. So that one should be coming on soon, 70 units, all apartments, that location. Meadow Branch Phase 2, if you go out there, you will see they have done an excellent job of preserving the two mature trees out in that area. They also have all of the landscaping in along the southern boundary. As you recall, there were a number of property owners along the Buckner Drive properties adjacent to that who had expressed concerns about the visual impact. So the developer has put in that landscaping already. Creekside Condos We did have an original site plan submittal, so that one, the PUD for that does not expire. However, the purchaser of that development is looking at a slightly different layout with the unit types and things. The zoning ordinance spells out criteria beyond which those kinds of modifications can be handled by site plan approval. And so far, they're not changing the number of units, they're not increasing the amount of traffic generation, and they're not decreasing the amount of green space by, I think, 2% is the threshold. If they don't do any of those, then the development plan doesn't have to come back through Planning Commission and Council. So Oakcrest will not be pursuing that development. They are negotiating the sale of that project to a different developer. That's 45 condo-styled townhouse units. Hackwoods, that's Shenandoah Valley, Westminster, Canterbury. The site plan is not signed yet, and obviously the construction has not started yet. That's 39 villas for age restricted. The local is underway in terms of utility work and grading. That's the 198 units that are going to be targeted towards Shenandoah University students. That site plan obviously was approved. Robert Square is one of two on the list here, along with Linden Drive PUD, the next one down. Both of those got site plan, or excuse me, PUD approvals back more than a year ago. And so both of those have expired development plans per the codified language in the zoning ordinance. It allowed, the ordinance allows the developer to come to City Council at least 30 days ahead of their expiration and request an extension. Neither one of these developers did that. And so it's a kind of very specific language in the ordinance. So as it turns out, both of those projects are undergoing proposed revisions to the layout, so it's just as well that they probably would have been coming back to you anyway. But it's unfortunate that both of those, the Robert Square is obviously a much smaller project than the Linden Drive site. We expect the Robert Square may drop a few units, maybe from 36 down to 32 units. On the Linden Drive project, where we had a number of 2-over-2 townhouse styles, a two-story townhouse on top of with another one on top of that, there was interest by one of the townhouse builders to do away with those, which would have probably eliminated 40 units. The latest potential buyer is saying, no, they think they probably do want to do the 2-over-2s. So it'll probably be close to, if not at, the 266 units of the original approval. Treetops is a small additional phase, only 18 units to the existing Treetops development down on the east side of Valley Avenue. The site plan was submitted, so it remains grandfathered, but they are having some challenges figuring out how to get stormwater handled, and they're looking at some what'll probably involve requiring some easements from adjoining property owners to get out to city storm sewers there. So not sure how soon they'll be able to get started there. The Tevis Townhouse project, 20 units of townhouses there, that was approved recently. The site plan was approved back in January. The holdup there is that the city contractor on the Valley Avenue Hope Drive project is using that as a staging area, so they have to get off of that site before Mr. Willingham can start his project there. Sarah Zane Building's coming along. That's only 6 units, but that's a mixed-use project here in the downtown. The Girard Street townhouses, they did get a site plan approval in the fall of last year, but they have not started construction. That's right at the corner of Cameron and Girard. Cameron Square, they just last week filed the site plan, and so that's, I've indicated 171. I think their plan actually identifies 175 units there. The density calculations will allow 175 units. But that has gone through quite a few Board of Architectural reviews, and so they're well on their way toward being able to get started. Piccadilly Townhouses, we had a pre-con meeting, pre-construction meeting that is, last week. That's 16 townhouse-styled, well, individually platted townhouse lots. So we should start seeing some work there, as far as I know. I don't think there's any. Great, okay. And then finally, the one that everybody asks about, the senior living project at the old hospital site. The last conversation I had with Mr. Todd Bryant, he indicated that they had some challenges trying to secure financing during COVID. Nobody wanted to fund a project that was for seniors, with COVID restrictions. He says they now have some financing in place, and they hope to start site work in 90 days. So be glad to answer any questions you have.
Anybody have any questions on these?
No, I just have a comment. It seems like every time I run into Todd Bryan, which is almost every 3 months, he keeps saying 90 days.
I know. Yeah, when I told Sean that, he reminded me that we've heard that answer before.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kim, any questions?
Not questions per se, just kind of responding to your comment or question about other columns and how to make this maybe more useful. I mean, this is very useful. It's helpful to kind of see what's out there, what's in the works. And when I totaled this up, and knowing that I think the only property that has expressed somewhat of a commitment to some level of affordable, depending on how you're defining that, could be 80 to 100% AMI, but is the locals. And if I remember correctly, I think that was a total of maybe 39 units or something, I think is what it was. And that was providing that they were getting funding through, Virginia Housing or DHCD. So if they didn't access that money, my understanding was that they probably wouldn't have any affordable units. So I think it would be helpful. I mean, there's 1,256 units. If all of this gets built, if all of these get built, and of course it's going to be over a matter of years, it's a total of 1,256 units with all but potentially 39 of them being market rate. And we have the housing study. Yes, we need the market rate units. That's really important. And I know about the whole buying down, buying up kind of conversations, and Sean and I have talked about that. But I think it would be helpful on this graph or on this table to know how many are market rate and how many are projected to be affordable. And I'm not saying that everything has to be, I mean, it'd be great if every development would have 10% affordable. And I know that's not going to probably happen, but I just think that as we're trying to track the housing study and the needs in the housing study, identify low income, affordable, and market rate. And I think I feel like it's my responsibility to ensure that we're looking at all of that and not just one slice of that. So if I was to change or edit this table, I would add a column or some way of defining how many of the units would be affordable.
Okay. And of course, 2 nights ago, council approved the B1 zoning on the North Cameron Street corridor. That's a major step forward toward the zero-pack property, where there'll be an extensive number of units that presumably will be affordable units.
Yep.
So on the, let's see, Cameron Square, was that a rezoning or PUD?
That was actually a conditional use.
Conditional use.
Yes.
Okay.
So there were a number of conditions on that. From an early review of the site plan that came in last week, it looks like they're adhering to those conditions.
And so I do see, it's helpful here when you reference PUD, because obviously that's where kind of zoning can go outside the lines, so to speak. But where we see the 2 that have expired, are those within the PUD ordinance, or are those stipulated in the approval?
So all PUDs are subject to a 12-month expiration if the applicant does not at least submit the first site plan within a 12-month period. Doesn't mean they have to secure the approval of it, and so that's why, for instance, Hackwoods and the Treetops ones, which were approved years ago, because their engineer filed the site plan, even though they didn't secure approval of it, that development plan from the rezoning stays active.
Okay.
But in the case of Linden Drive, we advised the applicant, after they secured their rezoning approval, that they should definitely file at least the Phase 1 site plan for the active adult. That was something, that didn't entail the sale of the townhouse development, which were the latter phases. If they had just submitted the site plan for that lower terrace there where the 160 active adult units are, they would have been grandfathered on the whole project.
What are you going to do, right? And for the old hospital, I know we keep hearing in 90 days, and I hear questions about that old hospital from people who are interested, and oddly from people who were vehemently opposed to it. It's like, you really want to see it that much? But I think they just want to understand if it's actually going to happen. And as we saw, not to mix these things up, but the feedback regarding the humanitarian shelter, there's a lot of disbelief or a lack of trust in the neighbors about what the developer will and won't do. And that's not for us to solve, but just to acknowledge. But is that project, was that originally, or was that proposed to be in phases, or is it all just one project? Redevelopment of the existing structure and the large front addition?
I'm not aware of any sub-phasing, no. It was
Okay.
just one large addition that also entailed renovation of the upper 2 levels of the tower.
Okay.
But again, that was a conditional use. Most of the rest of these, particularly the ones not in Old Town, they were rezoning applications, and
Right.
predominantly PUD rezonings.
So, and back to the differentiation between CUP and the PUD, getting into alphabet soup, the PUD has within it the text a requirement that they submit within 12 months. A CUP does not have that, but it could.
Actually, no, the CUP does have a similar language about a one-year time frame to file. But in the case of Cameron Square and
they've
the old
satisfied.
hospital, they filed their site plans within a year's time.
Okay. And then a CUP could actually have other time frame conditions associated with it.
Yes, and so, for example, the old hospital, I think there were 13 or 14 very specific conditions associated with that. Cameron Square had some, probably not quite that many conditions, but on the rezonings, that's where you either get voluntary proffers or you don't, and council can't say, well, I'll approve your rezoning if you do this. That's not legal.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's the last item on the agenda today. Any other discussion items, or I'll entertain a motion? Wait.
Talk about in the context of this development project updates is a very brief update on the South End project. So, or I guess we can call it a project now. I don't have much more to share other than what was in the paper and communicated. Obviously, we've been in communication.
Goes in the paper.
Oh, yeah, evidently. That's what I heard. So that particular project is now moving to kind of a staff work group level. It's a major undertaking. This will be the first city-owned fire station in the city's 200 and how many years been around, Tim? 276 years?
That
How-
one? No, that one hasn't been around that
No. How long has the city been around?
Oh, 277 now.
277. So the first city-owned fire station in our 277-year history. So we're going to take the time to do it right. We do intend for this station to be, a flagship station for the city. So we are assembling an internal work group that's going to start looking at the process for which we're going to go about it. I intend to convene that group within the next couple of weeks. Then there will be follow-up discussions with South End Fire Company to iron out details of the transaction and begin to move that forward. I intend to have an executive session at the next regular council meeting to discuss some issues of land acquisition, and we'll have some more details at that point to share about from staff about the process and the different negotiations that have to occur moving forward. But staff are very excited about it, and we're eager to start putting pen to paper and planning out what that station and what the development around it is going to look like. And Sean is, there's multiple departments play a role. Sean, from the perspective of the additional development that's going to be happening on site. Tim and his team, in order to determine what we can and can't do. Fire, of course, is involved, facilities, public services. This is going to be a pretty significant undertaking, but we're all excited to get working on it.
Okay, great. I appreciate that update. That's very helpful. As well as the development project status updates. Those are good. And if anybody after this meeting has thoughts or suggestions for improvements on this report, this is kind of, it's not a static report. Obviously, it changes as conditions change. And if we want to add to it or qualify what it might want to look like, just pass those directly to Tim.
Next, there is one question. Do you want this monthly or quarterly? How often do you want this update?
If I might
Speak on behalf of staff here, I would ask that we update this not monthly. A lot of times these things don't change. I would prefer quarterly, because a lot of these updates staff have to contact the developer, so that this is I think a very useful tool, but I would prefer quarterly just for staff time.
But just looking at some of the timelines on here, and I'm just making a suggestion. I would say it's 6 months, because, and the reason I would say 6 months is because when you look at it sooner than later and you don't see any change, then you start getting upset, and it's like, what are these people doing? Why aren't they doing this? But at least giving them 6 months, then there might be some progress. Because I'll take the old hospital for example, and so then there's nothing that's happened in 2 years almost now, and so we'll continue to see this, and
I'm happy with 6 months.
I'm happy
either
with
way.
6
Just not more than once a quarter would be my request, but
yeah.
quarter, 6 months, whatever the will is.
No sooner than a quarter, but not later than 6 months.
And-
Whatever makes sense, because there might be some benchmarks or milestones that on certain projects occur at a particular
Right.
time where you think it might be prudent to give an update.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be, those milestones of an approved site plan, or we're not reflecting it on here, but a building permit issued. While an approved site plan and a building permit issued does not commit to development, if you've got a building permit issued, you've got architectural drawings, you've got a significant amount of investment, you assume this is going to move forward. You still don't know. There's still no guarantee.
And for if there is a major update or change to it, we would just email council, kind of as a one-off. If one of these larger projects suddenly kind of fell apart and was going to have to come back through, or we would let you know.
Yeah, before the STAR does, right?
Yes.
I mean, the only thing I would say with the quarterly, I hear that every 6 months, and I certainly don't want to put a lot of extra work on staff, but I do think that this is a valuable tool for residents to kind of know if something's coming into there is planned, what is the status of that? And this is a go-to table that can give them current information. And so I do think that, the 90 or the quarterly, I think, is helpful, especially when you look at the old hospital, and it sounds like the 90-day is kind of this ongoing story. But residents are gonna wanna know, and I think for us to be able to provide, I mean, this is as of 2/23/22, but if it could be done quarterly, I mean, maybe it's just gonna take, I don't know. I think it's a valuable tool for residents, to communicate. There's nothing else that I know of for residents to go to other than calling you all, hey, what's going on with the Robert Square, development? What's going on with the Linden Drive?
Mhm.
So,
And I know that we're probably getting into the weeds here a little bit, but so are these updates on the website?
If we,
This agenda,
Right.
and we intend to post this.
So,
Yeah.
here's the thought. If you have this update on the website, when there's a change, you make the change on the website, because people are only interested in the ones that are in their neighborhood, in their community. And those that are mostly interested are those who stay up to date with what the city is doing, and they go on the website and they can go in there and say, oh, there seems like there's some movement going on here. That's something possible, I'm sure.
yeah, and we do have other customers who want to know about everything in the city. Like if somebody's thinking of purchasing a property to do an age-restricted development,
Right.
they're going to ask, what's the status of all the
Right.
other developments that might be age-restricted, or, just about every day we get somebody inquiring about, what's the development activity level like in the city.
Well, I know on the city's current website, there is the hot button for projects, but that's based on city-funded capital projects.
Right.
If there was something where that could also be part of it, projects, city projects, development projects, where it can just be, I won't call it a static report, but similar to this, that it's there. When, yeah, like a dashboard. It might be easy enough to update it just as those milestones are occurred.
The new website that we're working on has some of those dashboards
Yeah.
built into it, so we'll be populating it. Right now, Perry does do a static, kind of 2-3 page
Project update.
project status sheet that he updates periodically or whenever I request it.
And where does that go?
We typically post it as part, like we have reports attached to agendas sometimes. We
Okay.
typically attach it there. Normally, a counselor asks for it, and we forward it along, or we realize that it's been a couple of months, so I ask them to update it. This will get attached to, now it's been heard here, we'll attach it as a report at the end of the regular meeting, like we do with the public safety reports and whatnot. It won't be for discussion unless council wants to discuss it, but it'll be attached there as a report as well, whenever it gets updated.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Entertain a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all.